Okay, so I guess with this flashy intro, with this flashy first slide, designed by AI, we will make our way into this afternoon. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining both in the room and also online as well. I thought that actually a nice way to start would be to try and find out where you've sort of come from. So in terms of like the room, do we have anyone here in the room or online that is external to Oxford, that's not from the university? I suspect that that might be more online, but I'm just trying to get a bit of a gauge. Yeah, okay, Blaze is joining us externally. Great, we really want... Yeah, and we've got someone at the back as well, fantastic. This fellowship is for both, you know, external and internal candidates, so that's great that we've got some people joining that are external. In terms of the departments here within the university, can I just get a bit of a feel? Like, have we got biologists here? Have we got anyone there? Okay, great. We got material scientists. One, okay. Mathematicians. I mean, I probably won't go for all of the MPLS departments. Physics. Okay, a bunch of physicists. Anyone else I've kind of left out? I'm sure there are. Engineering. Yeah, engineers. Chemistry. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got a good smattering of people from the different MPLS departments. I'll just check online. We've got some people joining neuroscience, particle physics, engineering, astrophysics, soft matter physics, lots of physicists, always lots of physicists. Great. Okay, it's really nice that we've got people from a diversity of different sort of academic backgrounds here. That's great. My name's Ben. I'm the director of the Schmidt AI and Science program here in Oxford. So just a bit of an outline about today, and apologies to Elnaz and Rachel respectively here. I should have asked your permission to use these photos. From now until about 2:30, we've got an overview of the fellowship program, which I'm going to provide, and Steve, who I sort of sit under, is also going to be available to sort of answer any questions or things that I've left out. He'll jump in. And then from 2:30 to 3, Elnaz is giving a talk on her research. And Elnaz is in the Department of Engineering here. And Rachel Parkinson is going to be delivering our second talk. Both Elnaz and Rachel are Schmidt AI and Science Fellows from our first crop, our first group of fellows who came in. And Rachel is in the Department of Biology. So we've got two quite different projects here, which you can tell by the titles as well. And then really the aim of today is to get your questions answered about what this fellowship is about. And so with that in mind, from 3:30 to 4, we've just sort of got this sort of unstructured time, and we've got some amazing pastries, which Tanya, thank you so much, our great program manager, has helped us get today and sort out. They're from Barefoot Bakery. If you don't know Barefoot Bakery, it's a really nice bakery in Oxford. So yeah, well worth staying around for that. Sorry for those of you joining online that you're not able to partake in any of the nice things I just mentioned. So just to give you a bit of background on the fellowship scheme, Schmidt Futures, which is now known as Schmidt Science, is funded Oxford to deliver 110 postdoc years from 2023 until 2028. The fellowships are in AI for science in the non-medical sciences. That's something that's really key to stress, the non-medical sciences. In 2023, we had our first cohort of 10 Schmidt AI and Science Fellows. And as I said, Elnaz and Rachel here are joining us from that group. I don't think we've got anyone else from that first lot here. In 2024, we had 15 more fellows join. And I see we've got Milan and Daniel here. Is there anyone else? No, just got you guys here. So yeah, thanks for joining too. So currently we have 24 Schmidt AI and Science Fellows here at Oxford. One of them got poached by a biotech company. He's now CTO of a biotech company. So I think quite a successful story for him as well. So just to take you through the kind of the leadership of the program. So Steve, as I mentioned, Steve Roberts is one of the PIs on this program, and along with David Gavigan. And I kind of sit under them in my role as director. And Tanya is, as I mentioned, our great program manager. We also work with Martin Edmonds in MPLS division, and also Martin Robinson, who is head of the Oxford Research Software Engineering Group here at Oxford. And as I'll come on to stress, we see research software engineering is a really central part of our fellowship and the support which we provide, which is why, Martin is a key part of this as well. So I thought I'd start off by saying, broadly what we see the fellowship as. It's primarily a training fellowship. It's a nice time to take a breath after you finish your PhD, or if you're a few years past your PhD as well, and give you the opportunity to learn more about AI and how it can be used in science. And it gives you the space and the assistance to kind of grow in that way, if that's what you want. The cohort / the wider group of the fellows is absolutely central to the program. It's really nice that we have cohorts, sort of chunky-ish cohorts that join each year, which means it's a bit like, if you're familiar with it, sort of doctoral training programs here at the university at the doctoral level, where you get cohorts of individuals going through PhDs effectively together. It's like that, but a bit more grown up, if you like. It's not only for those considering careers in academia, and we run careers events for both, which are basically focused on people in either camp effectively, if you want to go into academia or if you don't, or if you're undecided. A lot of people are undecided. As I mentioned, research software engineering is absolutely essential to us in the program because it allows you to produce materials which are going to be long-lived, and they're going to be able to have a sustained impact on science. So you're not just necessarily publishing a research paper that then goes and sits on some server somewhere. You're providing tools which other people can use and build off. And more generally, we're here to kind of support you in achieving your goals. That's what we're entirely focused on in the kind of program directorship. So some details on the fellowship. I'll just move that out of the way a bit. So the 2025 fellowships are 2 years in length. Previously, they've been 1+1. And that was because of various things to do with underwriting the risk of the fellowship program. And now we have got kind of sign off that from the division that we're able to offer 2-year fellowships. We do not expect you to be experts in AI when you're coming onto this fellowship. It's a training fellowship. What you should know is that AI is not going to cure all of your ails. It's not going to be a magic wand that you wave in front of a bunch of data and it gives you a solution that's perfect, right? We expect you to know enough that you know that that's not the case. And importantly, because of the nature of the fellowship, it's about using AI to advance science. So what we're looking for is a really important scientific question, which you are going to use AI credibly to answer. As I mentioned, it's strictly for the non-medical sciences. And fellows, when they are applying for the program, need to identify 2 things. They need to find, well, apart from coming up with their project description, they need to find a PI who sits in the Mathematical, Physical and Life Sciences division, the MPLS division here at Oxford. So you will sit in an MPLS department if you were awarded this fellowship. You also need to find an AI mentor. As I mentioned, this is a training fellowship, we see it as. And so that AI mentor is supposed to help you in trying to figure out what types of AI method should you be applying, and hence what types of AI methods should you be trying to learn more about. That makes sense. In terms of deadlines for the fellowship, we have, in the program itself, we have a deadline which we extend to all the departments, but each individual MPLS department has its own idiosyncratic deadline for when you would need to apply for. So when you are thinking about applying to this scheme, you need to be sort of intimately in contact with the relevant MPLS department and the PI there, okay? But roughly the sort of timescales for that is like the departments typically towards the end of summer are when those internal deadlines for each of the individual departments are. Subsequent to receiving the applications, we then invite a subset of candidates to interviews in early December, and then there is an interview by a panel including subject matter experts. Okay. If you want to find out more information about our scheme generally, then you can consult our website. We are kind of in the midst of updating it at the moment because we're updating it to reflect some changes in the fellowship scheme and just also thinking about how we're going to run things for the 2025 intake too. So just watch that space effectively if you want to find out more. this fellowship is a training fellowship. And so when people start on the fellowship, soon after they have started, we will conduct a training needs analysis with each of the fellows. And so for those that have just joined, Daniel and Milan, who are sitting here, we are going to do that in the next couple of months. And the intention actually is we've rethought about a few things this year, and we're actually going to conduct another one for the fellows that have already been here a year as well. So I don't know if I've communicated that to you guys in the room either, but that's something it's an ongoing thing that we're doing as well. We're constantly trying to get better. We've only been doing this for about a year and a few months, so we're still learning. But yeah. And the training for AI is going to be a combination of a couple of things that you'll receive. One of them is sort of bespoke tutorial style training. And this is something that we actually developed by talking with the fellows. This is actually Rachel's idea that you came up with, that basically what we would do is pair up each fellow with potentially a postdoc or a PhD student here at Oxford. And then they would be the experts in a particular area of AI that you would need training in. And you would receive kind of tutorial style training in that. So that's something that we're going to be working on over the next few months here. But we also put fellows onto the CDT courses, the Centers for Doctoral Training here. So the StatML CDT, if you're familiar with that, and the AIM CDT, which offer a variety of courses in AI-related material. But alongside the sort of more, I guess, technical training, there's also a bunch of professional development type training that we do. So we run a bunch of careers-focused events. We're really passionate about a peer approach to career. So getting everyone as a group to think collectively about what individuals' goals are and to work together to achieve those goals. And because of that, we also run sessions to do with peer mentoring. So when you find someone else that's at a similar career stage to you, you meet up with them periodically, effectively, and discuss your goals and where you are in progress to those goals. And it's not for everyone, but some people find it really useful. We also run training in academic writing, scientific illustration. We run a really fun course this past year about scientific illustration, where we had a scientific illustrator come in and run a day for us, which I think was really great. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend that. And we're also sort of passionate about other modes of disseminating research. So you've got the kind of static PDF that you might produce, but what else can you do? You can produce videos, you can produce tutorial papers, you can produce pedagogical widgets or software, all these types of things, right? So we're going to be doing some things on that too. And then also, the thing that we ask our fellows to do right at the very start when they join is to do research software engineering training. As I mentioned, we think this is absolutely key to being able to advance science, allowing other people to build off what you've done. So this year we've done weekly training, so 1 day a week for 5 weeks, culminating in a week-long group research software engineering project, which is taking place towards the end of this month. And actually this year it's great. We've got people from all the other Schmidt AI and Science funded institutes. There are 9 of us worldwide. We've got a bunch of them descending on us in Oxford towards the end of the month, which is going to be really, really fun. We've got a bunch of social events as well as just the kind of hackathon type thing. So it should be really nice. I think we're going to Shakespeare on the first night. If the weather is all right. Well, no, I think they've got an alternative destination, even if it's not all right, which is good. Okay. That's Ruben appear. Ruben appears. Okay, so a really nice part of the fellowship is that we basically, all of the fellows, when they join, are able to become associate research fellows at Reuben College. And I mean, I guess that maybe it's a mix of people in the room, postdoc or PhD. Postdocs, I know often the college side of things doesn't currently play necessarily a very big role in your life. And that's a shame, because I think that the Oxford College experience is fantastic. And it just gives you great opportunities to meet people from lots and lots of different disciplines that you would just never get to meet otherwise. And I think that a lot of people find that some of the longer term collaborations that they actually build, I remember Steve saying about this, actually come about from just random college meals where you just sit next to someone and you just happen to meet them. So it's a really nice way to do that. In a kind of relaxed environment. A department can be a bit intense at times, right? Colleges are a bit more relaxed, I think. And also, along with the fellowship, we've kind of each of the fellows has various dining privileges or each of the fellows get the same dining privilege at Reuben, but so you get a number of kind of formal dinners per term that you can go to free of charge. So yeah. Okay, so now some just like other things. I didn't know quite where to put these, but funds. Everyone gets 2K travel per year. And we're flexible in that. We realize that there may be some years where you don't necessarily want to spend all of that, and you might want to, keep some of it back and then spend some of it in the following years. There's a central publication funds pot, which currently is rather underutilized, and probably shouldn't have said that. There is a laptop computing equipment fund of 2K. And we have privileged access for the university's supercomputing facility, ARC, for compute stuff, if you're doing heavy computations. If you're doing more experimental science, there was this sort of maximum that we allow of roughly £10,000 for consumables, not for equipment. So it's not being used to buy new equipment for the labs that you're sitting in. It's being used to buy consumables, which will be expended when you are doing your research, if that makes sense. The doctoral training centre in which we are sat is technically where the fellowship programme is housed. It's our kind of home of the programme outside of the kind of collegiate home, which is Reuben. It's really a great environment, the DTC, and we hold a lot of events here because of that. And one of the nice sort of perks is that if you are struggling to get rooms in your department or in college, then the DTC has that kind of ability. And also the research software engineering team, for example, are at the top of this building as well. So it's all sort of housed in one happy place. Okay. And with that, I'll sort of finish and just ask if anyone's got any questions. Yeah. And I'll just repeat your questions just so that people online can hear as well. It could be part-time. The thing that we have sort of discussed was that if you do want to go part-time, because of the nature of the timescales of the fellowship program, then it would be part-time for the amount of time that the fellowship is. So it'd be, if you went to part-time, it would be part-time for 2 years. So if you went to 50%, say, it wouldn't be part-time for 4 years, it would be part-time for 2 years. Sorry? Well, it sort of depends a bit on career stage. We definitely pay attention to that when people are joining. And so, yeah, I can't comment more than to say that we take that into account. I don't know if Steve or Tanya, you want to add anything? Typically.
Yeah. But there is a
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Limits on the number of years of postdoctoral experience?
So the question is just, sorry, I've sort of been repeating the questions. Is there a limit on years of postdoctoral experience? Excuse me. No, is the answer. I don't know, I wasn't struggling to get that out. It's just, no, there isn't. No, I mean, we have fellows which come with a variety of different levels of experience. People that have just finished their PhD to people that are co-directing centres. So yeah, it is a massive variety in that. Yep.
So I'm wondering, is there a list for AI mentors, or we can find anyone?
So the question is about how you can identify AI mentors. So we're really aware about this, particularly for people coming from outside the university that may not necessarily know who's the right person to connect with on that line. We can help. So if you, what I would say is talk to the relevant, if you're thinking about applying, talk to the relevant PI in the department, because they just may know someone that they think is appropriate. If you're still having trouble and you have a bit of a Google, and please just reach out to either myself or Tanya about that. No problem. Great. Mm-hmm.
Would that be acceptable, or is that excluded?
I think it depends a bit on the nature of the project. Steve, I don't know if you wanted to comment. You know the group better than I will. I'm just going to answer a few people online that I think that had their sort of questions first, if that's okay. So the first question was, is it possible to apply if we are still in the last year of PhD? Yes, a lot of people who are applying to do this fellowship are in the last year of their PhD, but we hope, but you have to have finished your PhD in order to start up the fellowship. Okay, so you need to be thinking about, the timelines need to be reasonable for that. So the question is, the wording on the eligibility is a bit strange. Can I apply if I finish my PhD in 2022? Yes, that's absolutely fine. That's no problem at all. And then the final question before I go to some more questions in the room is, I understand that the project supervisor needs to be placed in the MPLS division, but can the project itself be somewhat medical related? No, the key thing about the project is that it should not be medical related. Right, it should be non-medical sciences. Steve, do you want to add something?
Just say things could be medical related. We want to discuss ideas like biomedical engineering, where you're creating a tool or doing science in order to enable something within medicine. But core medical studies to do with healthcare, patient record analysis, and a whole range of things right at the very core of medicine are not allowed. That's not because we don't love them, it's because the way in which we're funded, Schmidt actually funds medical sciences separately through separate schemes, and we are not the appropriate point of contact.
No, thanks, Steve. It's worth saying, so we do, to give you some example of people that are sort of doing research, which is some way in that way related. We had a previous fellow, the one fellow who left, who was doing drug discovery, for example. We have a current fellow who is doing epidemiological or infectious disease epidemiology. That is fine. It's just, as Steve said, doing the kind of more patient records, clinical trials, that type of thing that is kind of a bit out of remit here. Yeah, a question in the back of the room.
So could they still apply for these, and how you'll be able to bring someone to university help because that doesn't give you a training. But here you can give a training for the project that you will be able to do. So how we can fit these two to 100%?
I think, I'm sure, I mean, see Steve is kind of nodding. I think I probably think we could probably figure out some sort of way forward there. Yeah, it's not something that we've well, I say that we have sort of had that partially thus far about people not necessarily doing full-time on the Schmidt project. So I don't foresee any sort of issues with that. That's fine. Yep.
About the internal process as well. What is the deadline of that? And then what do we expect for the internal selection process? I guess.
So do you mean the internal selection in the departments? So each MPLS department is allowed to put in 12 applications to us for us to then assess. And so the internal nature of how that selection process works is department specific, and depends on them really. I mean, because, I mean, just to give you some idea, last year, I think we had 1 or 2 departments that were around that number, but some that were quite a lot under that number too. So I guess it just depends a little bit on which department you're considering.
Because engineering is the core, one of the core teams that they are looking at, and I'm expecting that maybe there might be a lot of applicants from engineering department. If that's more than 12, I guess that's a little bit.
I think that there are departments that probably over-index a bit in terms of their numbers of applications, and engineering is quite a natural fit for this, as is physics and actually biology. We've had lots of that. Steve, do you want to
say last year's go by we got exactly 12 applications. We didn't need to select, so everybody who applied went forward into the Schmidt scheme. It's not always going to be the case. It wasn't like there were 100 people and we desperately tried to do a selection, which would be very difficult at that stage. So the numbers are similar. And in many departments, the same is true, I believe. I think possibly only physics was the only department that had like 15 or 16 applications, and they needed to reduce that to 12. But again, it's not like a 5 or 10 to 1 ratio.
Thank you.
Talk to your own departmental research office, and they will be able to give a lot more advice than we can.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Just a few more questions that I'll just answer online, and then I'll come back into the room if that's okay. Is it mandatory to move to live in Oxford, or can it be done remotely? So we do have fellows that do live outside of Oxford. But one of the key things that we ask our fellows to do is to be heavily engaged in the program. Program isn't just a funding mechanism for you to do your research, it's a training fellowship. And so that is a sort of key criteria for us judging the success of things. So I think if you were sort of living a long way away, we'd sort of be expecting people to be coming to these things fairly frequently. So yeah. Are you supposed to identify an AI mentor before applying? Yes. The idea is that you will have found an AI mentor before applying. But we recognize that that is not as straightforward necessarily, particularly for people coming from outside of the university. And so, as I said before, very happy to assist people in that process if you get in contact. But also, as I say, your MPLS department, if you're in contact with them, can also help. Can we have PIs from 2 different departments of MPLS? Is it advisable to have more than 1 PI? It's not.
Can you have one main one, but
Need to allocate the fellowship through and nominate department.
Yeah.
But research perspective, absolutely understand the advisory team, your colleagues, may be across multiple departments. So there's no problem having key PI researchers across many different departments or even internationally. But we do need to have a nominated PI whose department the fellowship goes through for financial reasons.
Yeah, so just to repeat that for people, because it was an online question, there is one MPLS department which the funds would have to flow through. So you would technically have 1 PI, but we recognize that research is collaborative and lots of people from many departments may be involved in your project. This is great, these sessions. They get you to think about questions that we've never even thought about, which is fantastic. So do the PIs need to take approval from heads of departments to host the fellow? No, that's fine.
I'm probably wrong, but you can blame me.
So the answer is no on that one. Yeah.
The Associated Research Office liaises with the head of department to write things like letters of support as needed. So everybody's involved and everybody's aware.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Can the project be a continuum of PhD work? That's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. What we are asking is that you have identified a scientific question that is an important one where AI can credibly have an impact. Okay, and if that happens to be a continuation of what you've done, that's fine. In some way, that's not a bad thing because you may have done some of the groundwork to demonstrate the viability of the idea. So that's absolutely fine. Can we have an AI mentor from externally, like another university? That is something that we have had. There's nothing wrong with that intrinsically. I would say that we do have some fantastic people working in AI here at the university across 4 or 5 different departments on who you count for. So worth thinking about that too, I would say, if you're considering an external AI mentor. Okay, I think that's, I've got one more question that's appeared. For AI projects, can we consider modeling with neural networks? Yes. That's fine. That's a simple question. Does anyone in the room have any questions? Yeah.
And the AI mentor be in medical science.
We have had that. This year we do have one example of that. As I said, the AI mentor can even be external. So that's actually fine. As I said before, just worth bearing in mind that there are some fantastic people internally, but medical science is internal. So yeah, all good. Any other questions? Yep.
Compared to the Schmidt AI program at other universities, is it similar? Are they connected?
That's a really good question. It's something I haven't really touched on, and I should have done, which is that one of the really nice things. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah. So yeah, the question was, how does Oxford's AI in science program compare to the other AI in science funded Schmidt programs across different universities? And one of the really nice things about the fellowship and the funding is that, and the funder, is that they really want to encourage us to mix with the other fellows from different universities. So there are lots of events, some of which you can sort of take a part in engineering what those events may be yourself by applying for pots of funds, which the funder makes available to get people together. So there's this mixing with other cohorts. In terms of how similar the program is to other programs, I think it depends. I can comment, Imperial, I think their program is similar in some ways to ours. We have very close links with Imperial, so that's the one I probably know best. Outside of this country, I'm a bit less sure, to be honest with you, but broadly similar. I think that one of our key things is that we place a lot, perhaps the most weight on research software engineering and the training amongst the top of the programs in terms of the weight we place on training more generally as well. Any other questions in the room? Yeah.
So, what time should we expect the outcome of the selection approximately?
So the question is, at what time should we expect the outcome of the selection? So there are 2 stages to the selection, or 3 if you want to count the internal department one. So the internal department one, they have to have submitted their candidates that they want us to take forward to consider for interview by our deadline, which is the sort of late summer. And then we will make a decision via a sort of sifting panel about who to take forward for interview, and that's in the autumn. And then the interviews take place in early December. And one of the things that we're quite proud about is our fairly rapid turnaround on decisions around who we are going to offer the fellowship to. So last year, if last year is anything to go by, we had made all our offers before Christmas. So yeah. Yep. No problem. The question is, can we have experimental collaborators? And the answer is yes. Yeah, that's a good question. One thing to be a bit aware of is that the funds that we are providing, they are for you. So it's not to be used, the funds we're providing aren't to be used for your experimental collaborators to perform experiments. That's a question that's come up before. So just, that's something to bear in mind. But yes, of course, that's great. Any other questions in the room or online? Okay, I think we probably should move on. I'm sorry for Elnaz and Rachel. Are you guys okay time-wise, or are you like... 3:30, yeah. You sure? Thank you so much. Okay, all right. Well, I will finish and hand over to you guys. So we've got Elnaz first of all. I think generally it's, have you got a pocket that you can put it in? Yeah, you can try that. If you just clip it on the outside. And I'm going to put the presentation.
Oh, okay.
One, probably, which one are you on? That's this one?
That first one. So is it working now?
Should be, yeah. Can everyone hear okay online?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Elnaz and I am AI Schmidt in Science.
Science Schmidt Fellow. Last week I had a talk in engineering department that how I became Schmidt Fellow. So I have a feeling that it's good to speak about this journey here again and to say how I changed somehow my way from being a postdoc and how Schmidt Fellow make me to be happier in my academic journey. So my title is a little bit different from what I suggest to Ben. So first of all, I will speak about this transition, then I will speak about what is my project about. Then the slide is not moving. Okay. Yeah. So in the first part, I will speak about who I am, what is my background. Then I will speak about how I became a Schmidt Fellow. Then how this fellowship support me in my academic journey. And finally, I will speak about what is my project. So my background is electrical engineering, but from my master, I started to work on the application of machine learning in smart grids. But to be honest, when I was a master's student, I did it in Iran, and we didn't have access to data as much as we have here. So the data, I was very lucky that my supervisor had access, and do not focus on my age, but many years ago, I was master's student, and my supervisor told me that, okay, we have this data. Do not focus on only computing the mean, like the average, median, or this stuff. I heard about machine learning. Go and search to see how you can apply machine learning on this data. And I realized that, if there is something like clustering, that if I apply on data, I am getting very good results, that I can show these results to my supervisor, and he was very happy with that. So I focused on clustering, but I just used 2 methods of clustering during my master, and I used specific methods during my PhD because my PhD was an optimization problem because my background is control engineering, and I used clustering to define different models. So my knowledge of machine learning was machine learning is a very good method, but I stick to clustering method. And during my PhD, I just used clustering. But when people ask me when they ask me what is your interest, I'm like smart grid, load monitoring, load forecasting, but my tool is machine learning, which was only clustering. So in 2021, I joined as a postdoc to Energy and Power Group, and my supervisor was Malcolm, and he chose me because he was thinking that I'm purely power engineer. So when I joined the group, people were looking at me as power engineer, and I started to do purely power engineering stuff without focusing on data or any machine learning. So I was working on a LEO project, which is one of the largest projects in Oxford, and I was doing power flow analysis for that. Then all my roles as a postdoc was the people were looking at me as power engineer. I was supervising PhD and master's students who were purely power engineers, no data there. And it made me a little bit sad, and I was not as happy as I am now. So I started to speak with people to say that, please, I know what is data and I know clustering. Give me some projects about this clustering stuff. So I started to define some collaborations with other groups like Low Carbon Hub, and to apply very basic clustering methods and showing them that I know some stuff here. And if other people in Energy and Power Group, they had data, I was showing them how clustering can help them to improve their models. But what was the problem that time? First of all, I joined the group the last year of that LEO project, and that was 5-year project. I was super new there, and I didn't know anyone there. So when I wanted to ask for something, I should go to my like senior postdoc of this project, then my supervisor, then they will say, okay, this person is proper person to send an email. So it takes like few days to find out who should I send an email to ask very basic question. And like when you are waiting and you feel that you don't know people, your self-confidence is lower than usual. Then like some people knew me as like pure power engineers, and some people who like I shouted like I know clustering. They know that I know clustering. So I was not sure, like when I was seeing people how should I like say who I am, what is my background. I only knew clustering and a few methods of that, but what I really wanted to do is like to learn other methods of like classification, regression, like to not just learn the word for them, learn what is going on in different branches of this machine learning. But I didn't have time because I had other stuff to like deliver. And because it's not part of your project, to be honest, I started to learn, then I stopped because I had other responsibilities. This is one of the issues that some of us may have is like visa issues, because when you are here as a contract, my first contract was for 8 months. Then I spoke with my supervisor. Based on the funding, as I remember, we extended for another 4 months. So these 4 months, 8 months, after 2 months, you feel that, okay, what should I do now? Should I extend it? If you are based on a skilled worker, you need contract. If your supervisor said that, okay, I don't have any funding, what should you do? So this was very big problem for some of us. And also when since I did all my education in Iran, when I joined the group, because the system is super different from here, I realized that if I compare the CVs, I do not get any funding I have good papers, I teach a lot, I did many stuff like other postdocs here, but I don't have any funding. I didn't get any money. I didn't bring any money to university. So that was another lack of my CV. So I started to speak loudly about how I feel about my postdoc with my PI and other senior members in our group. And the first thing that my supervisor told me was, do you have any idea? Do you want to write a proposal? Go and think and come with an idea to me. Then we can think how we can get funding for that. So what I did, I just merged these two LNASs together, like power engineer and data mining at the same time. And I defined something in the edge, like application of machine learning in some stuff in power engineering part. So I defined, this was like an idea, to be honest, on the whiteboard of my supervisor office. But he was happy with that, because this idea came from the previous project that I was working, and it was one of the main issues in Power Grid that they want this. But what was important for me is not just the idea. You should know what you want. So still, I don't know if I want to stay in academia. So that was one of the main problems. So I didn't want to apply for some fellowship, which were for 5 years, because I don't want to. If I were accepted for any fellowship like that, I'm not the type of person to stop it somewhere. So I would stay there for 5 years, and it makes me a little bit do I want to stay somewhere for 5 years or not? So it's very important for us as postdocs or the last year of PhD to know what do we want really, and based on that to choose proper funding for us. So I started to read lots of proposals of senior members in our group and started to write a proposal. All of these happened before anything I didn't know about Schmidt's future program at all. Then I told everyone that if you see any fellowship advertisement or call, just tell me. And I got an email from one of the colleagues that there is a Schmidt something that you can apply for. And it was what I want. So when I saw that that's really good because it has training program. Why it was important? First of all, I would learn lots of stuff about machine learning. That was one of my criteria. Second of all, I will be a student in the community of University of Oxford because I didn't know what was going on because there are lots of stuff in Oxford that everything was new for me. So I really enjoyed this training program. And if Tanya remembers, I said yes to every classes that they put for us. So they didn't want us to develop any AI method. So, and it was for applying the existing methods in our fields. So as I said, it was the application of machine learning in power system. What was really good, it was for 1 year, and they wrote that it can be extendable for another year. So it was exactly what I want. I didn't want to stay in a fellowship for 5 years, 3 years. It was a lot, much pressure for me. It has a training support, which I used a lot, and it was we had a software engineering support. And what was really good for me is knowing people from other departments. Because my office is in Osni, and I never had a chance to come and see what other postdocs like Rachel. I found many good friends, and then I can complain about everything with other postdocs too. So it was very good for me. Then I got this email that changed my life, that they selected me as an AI fellow. And I think there was a question that when they will announce that, it was exactly 1 week after the interview. So it's not there are some fellowships that take 1 year, the whole process. But this one, because we were the first group, I think it was less than 3 months that everything changed. So it was really fast. Okay, from now on, I will speak about the project that I have in my fellowship. So I am a power engineer. So it was very important for me to focus on the challenge that we have in power system. So one of the challenges is that our power system is designed for considering the conventional loads, and it's robust and reliable. But as you see, in last years, everything is changing in our life because of the new demands that we have, like electrical vehicles that you see on the roads, or heat pumps, or solar panels, and all of them are putting some pressure on the grid. So what is important for us as power engineers is to be on top of these changes and find out what is exactly going on there. What is the easiest or ideal way to do that is putting some sensors on each of these loads, getting some data about these loads and how they are reacting in the system, and analyzing them. But what is the problem? First of all, we cannot put these sensors everywhere because of some reasons, like privacy issues. There are problems with sending these data to operators, their resolution and this stuff. And also, if you get some data from different loads, you do not know exactly where this load comes from. So all of them makes some trouble in our analysis. So what is my project about is coming 1 level up to protect the privacy of consumers and looking at the system from 1 level up. So I don't know what is exactly each consumer does. I just get the aggregated consumption of those consumers and trying to translate that to the proper actions from power communities. So the title of my project is translating grids substation load data into actionable information, but using machine learning. So in general, if I want to speak about what is the main idea, is like I'm getting load data or the consumption, the total consumption of people, and I'm trying to find out like the amount of like some solars, like renewable generation, or some ACs or electrical vehicles. I'm trying to disaggregate this total demand per each specific load that I want to know. Or in another like figure, just showing that if I get the total demand, I want to see that how much of this demand belongs to each type of load. And we usually focus on specific loads like electrical vehicles because you can motivate consumers to change their charging behavior of their cars. And what is important is that if you do this disaggregation, somehow you can analyze the consumption behavior of your consumers, and it helps you how to motivate them and what is the like best way to like shift the consumption and this type of stuff, which is very important for power computing. So I started my project using the real data of OSNI, one of the substations in OSNI, and I think 100 houses were connected to that substation, and we had some EVs there, but I didn't know, they didn't tell us how many EVs were there. But what was the problem with this real data? So I get the data. I could see that after adding that EV, something is changed, but there were lots of gaps in that data that I didn't know how should I fill that. Also, there are other problems, like there were some outliers that I didn't know that if it is outlier or not. So it makes like my life very difficult because when I sent an email to ask them, first of all, because of privacy issue, they didn't answer and they were like, we don't know. Then there were some faults that happened in some sensors. And since they do not do specific analysis on that data, they didn't know that that failure is happening there. So I was the person who were like informing them about what is going on there. And also, like we have the data from with different resolution. So I'm working on time series data set, but having like 10 minutes, 1 minute, 5 seconds, it makes the computation very complex. And they didn't give us information about by day. I'm the electricity company that I was working with. They didn't tell us enough information about the consumers in that specific area. So I switched to the data set that is a benchmark. And I have used that during my PhD for a single residential level, but now I'm using like 25 houses, I think, from a specific area in US. And yeah, it's 25 houses. It's measured, it is collected for 1 year, 2018. The resolution is 1 minute, and here is the devices that I have generally in this area. And my focus is on disaggregating the EV pattern, electrical vehicle pattern. And based on the data that I have, I know that there are 7 electrical vehicles in this area. So this is like a very high level schematic. It's like you get the aggregated demand, you develop a disaggregation model, and you try to extract the demand of electrical vehicles from there. This is the data that I get. So this is the data that I want. And I should like develop some machine learning based stuff or database stuff there. If I formulate this problem, so I have the total consumption here, which consists of electrical vehicle consumption, other consumptions that can be for any load, and noise of the system or the sensors that I have. So in the first stage, I just wanted to see which methods I can apply. So I spoke to Ben a lot about my problem, and he suggested that like my supervisor also suggested that applying different methods is not important. What is very important is like doing the feature extraction. You should be able to find out which feature is very important in your problem. So I started with a very basic methods to find out which features are important in my problem. I think I started with linear regression. I knew that the problem is not linear regression, but somehow I started to define different features based on the data that I have. Then at some points, I somehow get some first guess which features are important. Then I switched to like defining my problem as a classification problem. So in this problem, what is important for me is like to find out if any EV is charging on a specific point or not. That is the main problem that I want to solve. And I use a logistic regression for this. The main feature that was like that has the most effect was the ratio of the consumption at each sample to the average of the consumption during each day. So I chose only one feature. Then I applied logistic regression. I didn't write the mathematical stuff here. I just wanted to show you the results. And the results was not bad. It was not good, but it was not bad because it was more than 50. But at least it gave me some first thoughts of what is going on in my problem and how my data is working. Then I started to speak about my problem again with Ben a lot, and he suggested me like this was the like very good point for me because in logistic regression, each sample is independent of the other samples, but somehow in my problem, these samples are related to each other. And this is where Schmidt's like support comes, because I didn't know that these type of methods exist. I heard about hidden Markov models, but because it has very difficult math behind that, I never go and learn that. And because I didn't want to use it during my PhD or master. So I went and like learned about this method. Very generally speaking is like you have some observations. In my case, is the total demand that I have. But behind these like observations, there are some states that those states somehow define what is your observation. So you get these observations, and with hidden Markov models, you try to estimate the sequence of these states behind your observations. So just this week, I applied a hidden Markov model on my data, and I get very good results. I think they are good in comparison with logistic regression, and somehow like we will add more complexity. This is a very like basic level of, I think, hidden Markov models, but in comparison with the previous one, somehow the accuracy increased for around 25%. As I said, so I will like add more complexity, like how my hidden Markov model should be time dependent, and I should check if the weather data or seasons will like affect my model or not. In this case, I only focus on electrical vehicles, but I should focus on if I add any like PVs or other low carbon technologies to the system, how they will react. And in my case study, I only have 7 EVs. Adding more EVs there, like to have like 14 EVs in your 25 houses, how they will affect the demand. I should also consider that one too. Thank you so much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Are you coming around after?
Yes, I will be here.
Brilliant. So might I suggest that we move on with Rachel, and if anybody's got any questions, if you're around afterwards.
Sure, yes.
People can come and grab you.
Yes.
Thanks. variants of talk.
That's not me.
That's not you.
It's the one below.
Sorry.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. I am going to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing over the past year as a Schmidt Fellow, but I will start off by, I guess, introducing myself a little bit. So I am a sensory neuroscientist by training. I am very interested in sensory systems, primarily vision and taste, and I work with insects. So my PhD research focused on visual motion detection in the locust, and then I moved on to working with bees, and I've been working with bees ever since. So kind of by nature, my research is quite multimodal. I do a lot of neural recordings, electrophysiology, recording from taste receptors and from visual neurons, and I do a lot of kind of weird behavioral assays as well. And I'm primarily interested in investigating how toxicants in the environment affect these sensory systems. So I've done a lot of research on pesticides and the effects that they have on vision and foraging decisions in insects. So I'm really interested in bees. As I mentioned, bees are so cool and they're really fun to work with. They have these incredible minds. So various experiments have shown that they can count, so they can distinguish between the concept of 2 and 3. They can use tools to achieve different tasks, and they've even been shown to play. So they will sort of spontaneously interact with objects in their environment, even when they've learned that there's no reward involved there in terms of like a sugar solution or something. The reward might be the playing itself. So bees also, many species of bees live in these eusocial colonies. They live in these really big groups and they display various types of communication. We also know that bees navigate over really huge distances and they use various forms of sort of visual cues and optic flow detection to do that. So they're also interesting from the perspective of robotics. And of course, probably most important to everyone here is that bees pollinate the vast majority of the crops that we eat. So we depend on them very much. And actually the ecosystem depends on not just honeybees, but also lots of other species of bees and other pollinators as well. So we know that pollinator populations are in decline, and one of the main drivers for this is agriculture. If you take a look at these two images, on the left we have a wildflower meadow, and on the right is some monoculture cropland. We know that from wildflowers, this is sort of like a grocery store for bees. They go out, they go shopping, they can go and select pollen and nectar from different species of plants to actually meet their nutritional needs. So different amino acids and sterols and carbohydrates are going to be present in different plants. These sparse patches require bees to sort of fly over longer distances to get the nutrients that they need, but they represent habitat for breeding and overwintering. So it's not just a grocery store, it's also their home. Whereas the monoculture cropland, this is oilseed rape that you'd call it, I would call it canola. These are plentiful and dense crops. You can find, very easily lots of sweet, sugary nectar here, but this is a nutritionally incomplete source of food for bees. So if this is all that they have to forage on, they will be lacking in certain nutrients. This also represents a very significant pesticide exposure route. So most commercial crops, or many commercial crops, have pesticides applied to the seeds prior to planting, and the pesticides actually grow into all parts of the plant, including the pollen and nectar. We also apply other types of pesticides like herbicides and fungicides in addition to insecticides. So there's a real soup of compounds that insects are exposed to. And last but not least, this represents a huge loss of habitat. So they're not able to overwinter or breed in these areas. So I'm really interested in these drivers of decline, so nutritional stress, pesticides, and climate change as well in the context of temperature extremes and the effects that drought has on food sources for bees. When we are thinking about, I guess, how different compounds end up in the environment, well, it's usually through a series of toxicity tests, and these hinge primarily on these lethal endpoint assays. So how much of a compound does it take to kill a bee? Obviously very easy data to analyze, but actually not that informative. So although a certain concentration might be directly lethal, we see a lot of really scary effects occurring at much lower concentrations. And we actually, the relationship between the concentrations where the sublethal effects occur and the concentrations that kill an insect are not easily predicted. So what I mean by that is if you have two compounds that might have very similar mortality curves, so similar amounts will kill the bee, we can see very different response curves when it comes to any other kind of measurement. So for example, effects on reproduction or effects on navigation, where one compound might have very severe effects at much lower concentrations. And we really do see this even for quite closely related compounds, these differences. So one problem with sublethal toxicity tests is that they are not at all scalable. I'll give you an example from my own research so you can kind of get what I mean by that. So this is an experiment that I did where I basically got a bee to run on this little treadmill in VR. So I was just showing it videos of optic flow, so black and white grids moving either around the bee clockwise or counterclockwise. And insects will sort of naturally run in the same direction that the optic flow is moving. So you can test their vision and their visual responses in this way. And I found that different pesticide compounds or mixtures of pesticides actually really impaired their ability to appropriately follow this type of visual motion. So likely there would be some severe effects on navigation as well. So we know that sublethal toxicity testing is great for understanding very precise effects on behavior and physiology, and it also can be mechanistically quite informative. So we can learn a lot about the way that these pesticides affect the brain by doing these types of experiments. However, these data are quite difficult to obtain, difficult to sample a very large number of different insects or a very large number of different compounds, and they're really not scalable. So this is the honeybee. This is not the only bee. There are hundreds of different species of bees in the UK alone. And as I mentioned, there are, dozens, hundreds of different pesticides and other compounds in the environment. So how do we tackle this problem when really it's just so huge? So we lack these methods for high throughput sublethal toxicity testing. So I've been designing and developing this behavior lab, which aims to enable this high throughput behavioral data collection, also to automate analyses to model normal and abnormal behavior. And I aim to quantify the lowest observed effect concentrations for individual and combined stressors, and also looking between different species. So here it is. This is the behavior lab. I spent a good part of the first year of my fellowship designing and building this, including quite a lot of component testing. So there's a clear perspex cage at the bottom where the insects actually are held. There's a camera, a microphone, and a variety of different sensors, and it's all based on Raspberry Pi. And one of the main goals here was to develop a system that was not expensive, so would be possible to either have a lot of these or have other researchers be able to kind of print their own or cut their own. So tried to keep the costs quite low. Hidden costs here, of course, are all the months spent designing, component testing, soldering, troubleshooting, programming, etc. So what does the behavior lab do? So in its sort of data acquisition side of it, we're recording video, audio, and the various sensors, and we're recording these in segments, and that we can continue recording sort of endlessly, but at this time, I'm looking over 24-hour periods. So I mentioned sound. So sound is a really overlooked aspect of behavior. Most researchers, unless they're specifically studying communication or something else that has a sound aspect, they don't record sound. We record video typically. So this is a bit unusual. However, we do know that from experiments looking at flying bees, we can actually identify different behaviors based on the sound that their wings make. Okay, we can identify species of insects. So Oxford's humbug that Stephen Roberts is part of or leads, they use the sound of mosquito wings to identify which species they're dealing with. And an example from the lab where I'm hosted at Oxford, it's possible that we can also use the sounds emitted by hives, honeybee hives, to diagnose their health. So why is machine learning suited to this project? So we really have a very large amount of high dimensionality data, video, audio, metadata, other sensor data. It would be hugely time consuming, obviously, to analyze all of this by hand, but kind of more importantly is that we don't know a priori what resolution of behavior to focus on, and we don't want to constrain it. What I mean by resolution is you can imagine we can label behaviors, grooming, flying, walking, standing, all fine and good, but actually what might be happening is there could be effects on the ways that these behaviors are being performed. So the coordination during walking or the way that the insect is grooming itself might be affected. And because a lot of these pesticides are neurotoxicants, we would expect there would be changes in sort of their movements in general. So this past year, I had two great master's students who collected a bunch of data for their projects. One of them was looking at the effects of pesticides on individual bees, and the other one was looking at the effects on microcolonies, so these little groups of bees, and looking at things like brood development over time. And so, I don't know if it'll let us hear it. At the top panel, we can hear/see bees that are buzzing in this little box, and you see in the spectrogram, it's just kind of like a continuous wash of buzzing sounds. Something that's quite interesting with these groups of bees is actually they display kind of interesting communication patterns as well that we are going to be investigating. So in the bottom panel, there's the same group of bees, but now they are sort of talking to each other. So you see these short bursts of buzzing sounds that actually different bees in this little group are performing if you look quite closely. So these are the kinds of interesting things that are kind of emerging alongside all the sort of pesticide work that we're doing. So one of my master's students ended up using this open source software this year called Animal TA in order to track the bees in these cages. And he extracted some pretty sort of simple measurements from the videos that he recorded, primarily looking at how fast and how much the bees were moving around over time. And so he found these circadian rhythm related movement dynamics. So in the panel that we see here, the shaded area represents nighttime, and we see that the bees are just moving around less during the night. So that in itself is kind of interesting. But even more interesting is that we can kind of distinguish between the different pesticide compounds over a concentration gradient based on the ways that the bees are moving over this 24-hour period. This is a figure actually that I submitted with my proposal about all the things that I am doing and also am hoping to do. I won't get into it now because we're a bit time constrained, but you know, to be continued. So next steps here, obviously continued data collection. I have students over the summer who will be recording from wild bees, so collecting bees that are flying around outside, bringing them in, and putting them in the recording studio to see what they do. And of course, the main focus now on my end is the model development and optimization to see what we can do with these data. So as I mentioned, you know, I'm sort of interdisciplinary by nature, but I really wanted to cross fields from more biology towards knowing a bit more about AI, I guess you could say. I too dabbled in clustering prior to this journey, clustering the gateway to, you know, AI, I guess, and found it really useful in my research. And I really wanted to learn more. I already had a little bit of programming experience prior to applying, primarily in MATLAB and R, and I wanted to know more. But I knew that this was going to take a huge amount of training and a huge amount of time. And it's very difficult as a postdoc to kind of afford yourself the time to do this. There's a lot of pressure kind of to get the next grant, or maybe you're already working on a project. And this was just sort of the perfect opportunity to take a pause and be able to actually get some of the training that I was really wanting. So what I've gained this year with this fellowship, a lot of things. So obviously lots of new skills and understanding. I now program in Python. I use Git in my daily life. I know how to program and component test, work with electronics and Raspberry Pi. And I took a lot of math courses because coming from a non-computational background, I hadn't even taken linear algebra. So, I've learned quite a lot over this year. I have lots of new research ideas, lots of exciting plans, things that I hadn't even considered previously have kind of come to mind now. None of this would have been possible without really excellent mentorship. So Steve Roberts is my AI mentor, and Ben Lambert has also been instrumental in this whole process. But kind of one of the most important things that I've gained over this year is a network. So my cohort of Schmidt Fellows, I was invited to take part in a collaborative project trying to investigate how we could bring AI into ecology. And of course, sort of the broader Schmidt network across the different institutions. It's really kind of shown me that, you can learn a new trick, but it's better and more efficient to just find someone else who already knows that trick. All right, so thank you all very much for listening. And of course, my PI in biology, Jerry Wright, and the Oxford Bee Lab, and my master's students I'm very grateful to them as well. Thank you.